Welcome, everyone. My name is Alain Branchot. I'm the Executive Director of SNAP Québec and will be today's moderator. For those who, there'll be some important information in the chat and instruction on the session. Just keep an eye on that. Bienvenue, Barry Galoust Bolorine. Welcome to this second event as part of the talk series from Montreal to Yerevan, an Armenian-Quebec dialogue on the path to COP17, organized by the American University of Armenia Acopian Center for the Environment and la Société pour la Nature et les Parcs du Canada, section Québec, la SNAP Québec. We'd like to thank Acopian Center for the Environment for a great partnership which allows us to learn about Armenian perspective and enhance our collaboration in the view of COP17. Today we'll discuss about transformative change and the need to integrate this in COPs, defined by IBES as the system-wide shift across economic, social, and government structures. Transformative change is the solution to the three underlying causes of biodiversity loss: disconnection from nature and domination over nature and peoples, inequalities and the concentration of wealth and power, and thirdly, prioritization of short-term material gains. If we don't address these underlying causes, we won't succeed in reaching the objective of the global biodiversity framework. So we need to put transformative change as a top priority on the agenda of every COPs. Today, we are bringing together experts from policy, science, and practice to highlight scientific evidence, on-the-ground examples, and the importance of local governments in implementing solutions. I'll be presenting. We have the honor of having three panelists. Let me introduce Ana Maria Hernandez Salgar, who is an internationally recognized expert on environmental law, multilateral negotiation, and the science policy interface, with 28 years dedicated to advance global biodiversity conservation. She was the first woman to chair the Intergovernmental Science Policy Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services, IBES, from 2019 to 2023. Most recently, she served as a senior advisor to the COP16 presidency on the Convention of Biological Diversity, CDB, in 2024, COP at Cali in Colombia. She now acts as a special advisor on transformative change at SNAP Québec. We also have the honor of having Sergio Aranguren, who is the technical coordinator in Italy in Colombia. He is a professional in international relations and urban management and development with experience related to the knowledge and operation of the multilateral environmental agreements, CBD, UNFCCC, Ramsar Convention, as well as the IBES, IUCN, among others. Working experience with the implementation of projects focused on sustainable development and local and subnational governments, and the elaboration of biodiversity assessment at the regional and national levels. Thirdly, we have the honor of receiving Gabarat Kazanyan, who is an assistant professor at the College of Science and Engineering at the American University of Armenia, and a lead aquatic researcher at the American University of Acopian Center for the Environment. He holds a PhD in limnology from the Humboldt University of Berlin, as well as a master's degree in fisheries ecology at the American University of Beirut. Garabet's work centers on applying innovative tools and participatory approaches to integrate watershed management. Recently, Gabaret coordinated the EU mission Ocean Others project, scaling up citizen science in the water domain. Currently, Garavet activity contributes to support the European Data Network of Marine Citizen Science. Let's start with our first panelist, Ana Maria. In the past year, scientists from IPBES have demonstrated that our economic system and our value system are not compatible with living in harmony with nature. To align with numerous policy and that we have missed most target of the past global biodiversity framework and are not aligned to reach the current targets for 2030. The good news is that solutions are known, and it's called transformative change. To better understand transformative change and how it can be implemented, we are lucky to have with us Ana Maria. So, Ana Maria, first question for you. How can the scientific evidence from IPBES assessments, especially those on transformative change and on business and biodiversity, be translated into public policy proposals and support the implementation of the coming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework?
Well, thank you very much. And hello to everybody. I'm very happy to be here with you. And about your question, well, I always have been saying that science is very important and useful in every area, but especially is useful when it becomes actionable. And addressing biodiversity loss requires knowledge from science, yes, but also from other knowledge systems, and this need to be coordinated at national, global, and local levels. That is where economic policy and social paths needs to come together. And for example, as you know, the IPBES global assessment was pivotal in the discussion of the coming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. So these two worlds comes together. And as you mentioned, Alain, the IPBES transformative change assessment define transformative change as a fundamental shift across three dimensions: views, structures, and practices. And these three dimensions need to be directly reflected in how countries design their national biodiversity strategies and action plans, their national policies, their national legislation, and that is how multilateral actions and ambitions get real and traceable and get traction at national level. The key task, so, is anchoring national proposals in root causes and not only address the symptoms. That is very important. IPBES transformative change assessment identifies three underlying causes of biodiversity loss. You already mentioned them. And so the policies that only address direct drivers without reforming these structural roots will fall short in the implementation of the global framework. And additionally, about the business and biodiversity assessment, it gives a very concrete tool that is very important to listen to. It shows that acting now could unlock more than $10 trillion in business opportunity and support 395 million jobs globally by 2030. And it gives governments the metric that they need to integrate biodiversity into fiscal and sectoral planning. So in a short sentence, we have the science indeed, but the question now is whether policy decisions use the science or not.
Thanks, Ana Maria. And based on your experience, what is the most effective way to create an environment for dialogue at COP17, the upcoming COP at Yerevan, to mobilize the change on financial and productive models in order to revert the root causes of nature degradation?
Yeah, well, this is the question of the year, you know, but we have to be totally realistic. We need multilateral spaces that produce action, not just procedural, political, or diplomatic, correct outcomes. For me, the first priority, for example, is to center discussions on the development model reform. That is non-negotiable. Maintaining this business as usual model is really a serious mistake. We cannot repeat what happened with the age targets implementation. And we can see how we didn't reach those targets. The IPES Transformative Change Assessment is really explicit on this. The indirect drivers of biodiversity loss must be at the forefront of the policy discussions. And that's why precisely SNAP Quebec, for example, is intended to open a full day space on transformative change during COP17 and alongside another spaces to discuss about finances. This builds from a path that was already open in COP15 with the Montreal call, then continued in Cali at the COP16 with the Cali response, and now we hope that in Yerevan we are going to land with concrete actions. So the second priority now is to close the financial credibility gap. I think that that's very important. You know, according to the UNEP State of Finances for Nature that was just recently released in 2026, states that in 2023, only $220 billion went to nature-based solutions, while $7.3 trillion flowed into natural negative activities. So that is a ratio from 1 to 33, and this is a huge political problem. No, it's not a technical one. And this really requires structural economic reforms urgently. And the third priority, is to making the private sector as a structural actor. Business and summits are events on business and biodiversity are already operating in the Conference of the Parties. Those are useful, but they mostly focus on disclosure and financial mechanisms. What COP17 needs additionally are spaces where everybody, companies, IPLCs, civil society, governments, comes together to work on the underlying economic models, not just on the instruments. So for me, the format of COP17 needs to match the scale of the problem. That is the challenge.
So we need many actors to be part of that discussion at Yerevan next fall. And in what ways does the incorporation of plural values of nature in transformative changes makes the difference to build ambitious but doable actions at national and multilateral levels?
Yeah, precisely. We are connecting those dots indeed. Because, you know, for me, biodiversity loss is largely a result of political, social, and economic decisions that do not account for the full range of nature values. And I want to recall the IPES values assessment that says that incorporating a wide spectrum of values is a key leverage point for sustainable transformation. So, in my point of view, the plural values make a practical difference in maybe key specific ways. First, they require collaborative actions. And, you know, when nature is framed only through market values, communities that hold these relational, cultural, stewardship-based relationships with their territories are excluded from the governance. And so recognizing plural values allows diverse groups and worldviews to participate, and that directly supports the legitimacy and durability of national commitments. The second is that the plural values reframe what admission means. That is very important. Targets become achievable when communities and governments are not forced to choose between nature and development. So, but they can define visions of well-being in which both are connected. That requires including, for example, environmental costs in the decision-making. And third, these plural values connect science, other knowledge systems, and local governance. For example, the Transformative Change Assessment identifies four guiding principles: the equity, the pluralism, the respect, and the adaptive learning. And these plural values are the core, at the core of each of those. For the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework to reach the national local level, I think that these principles need to be embedded in the MBSAPs, in the policies, and the financial mechanisms. So for me, values are not abstract. They are the key to frame the gaps and the solutions to be addressed in the territory directly.
Thank you so much, Ana Maria. In our endeavor to promote solutions to the underlying causes of biodiversity loss, we've observed that a lot of initiatives take place at the local level, and the crucial role of local government in implementing transformative change is obvious. So, to learn about this essential role of local government in implementing transformative change and what it looks like in real life, let's ask Sergio about ICLEI's works as part of their circular program. First question for you, Sergio. In your work at ICLEI, you translate global goals into local realities. How can local governments demonstrate that transformative change is a viable and beneficial path to strengthen community well-being?
Okay, hi everyone. Thanks for the invitation to participate in this webinar. First of all, I want to present in a couple of seconds what is ICLEI. ICLEI is a global network that represents local and subnational governments in promoting sustainable development at urban and local levels. So, and we promote this sustainable development through 5 pathways focused on biodiversity, conservation and sustainable use, climate change, circular economy, resilience, and equity. And in particular, in case of our pathway on biodiversity and aligned with the CBD, it is important to mention that ICLEI represents officially local and subnational governments in the Conference of the Parties of the Convention on Biological Diversity. We participate and represent them in the negotiations, and also we organized a local and subnational summit every 2 years in every biodiversity COP. And the CBD and the Kunming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework invites local and subnational governments to support the implementation of this biodiversity framework through a specific goal, which is the number 12, which is focused on urban biodiversity, and through the formulation and implementation of the LBSAPs, the local biodiversity strategies and action plans. So for this case in Colombia, in ICLEI Colombia, we have developed a strategy to support the implementation of this global biodiversity framework and the implementation of transformative changes aligned with the IBES conceptual framework. And we have called this process the biodiversity compliance, which is inspired on the climate change compliance and is composed by 4 windows. One window is focused on the technical aspect. So it's important to know what do we have in terms of biodiversity at the local level. So we apply the Singapore Index or the Urban Biodiversity Index, which is also recognized by the CBD. We have been also working on mapping and on analyzing nature contributions to peoples, aligning this with the IBES conceptual framework. When you have this technical aspect, this clarity about what do we have at local level in terms of biodiversity and ecosystem services or nature contributions to people, you can then advance with the development of public policy. So we formulate with local and subnational governments these local biodiversity strategies and action plans, which is the second window. And then we develop a strategy related to multi-level and multi-stakeholders governance. So it's important to organize all these stakeholders at local level and see what are their roles and their responsibilities in terms of conservation and sustainable use of biodiversity. And finally, which is also very, very important, is the financial aspect. So how much is the cost for the implementation of this action plan? So we also support local governments to identify what is the cost for implement these local biodiversity strategies and action plans and promote this conservation and sustainable use of biodiversity at local level. And we have had the opportunity taking advantage of some international cooperation to implement this biodiversity compliance in a couple of cities and metropolitan regions here in Colombia. So now we can say that local and subnational governments are implementing transformative changes aligned with IPBES and supporting the implementation of this global biodiversity framework.
So it plays a very essential role for giving a voice to local government and helping them get organized to protect biodiversity. Could you give us examples of transformative initiatives led by ICLEI members, for instance, related to the circular economy waste management initiatives?
Okay, yes. So as I mentioned, we have these 5 pathways in ICLEI, and one of those is circular economy. And in circular economy, we work into specific topics: food systems and waste management. So for instance, here in Colombia, we have been working in the city of Medellin in the implementation of nature-based solutions aligned with food systems and waste management. So at the neighborhood scale, we are designing with communities and stakeholders at local level nature-based solutions and incorporating them to participate in all this process, and with the objective of promote a sustainable use of biodiversity, but also promote human well-being and support their economic benefits, promoting a sustainable use of biodiversity. Also, we have been working in other cities here in Colombia in terms of food systems, for instance, implementing nature-based solutions related to food systems and with the idea to strengthen community and nature resilience. And we have been implementing specifically community gardens to support food systems at local level, and also incorporating education strategies. So how you can also support the schools and work with children's, incorporating these topics in their educational programs to understand and enhance consensus about the importance of food systems and the relation with circular economy and biodiversity. And one additional specific example is in the city of Cali, which hosted the COP16 a couple of years ago. Last year, we formulate with them their local biodiversity strategy and action plan. And one specific axis of this action plan is focused on bioeconomy. So this is a direct relation between public policy and circular economy and the coming global biodiversity framework and its implementation at local level.
Looking ahead to COP17, how can cities present financing schemes that prove that investing in nature is a resilient strategy?
Okay, so specifically, a couple of years ago, we implemented a global project, which was called Interact Bio, or Biodiversity Action at Global Level. And we developed a specific topic focused on biodiversity and finance. So we develop a catalog of mechanisms and instruments at local and global and national level for give some alternatives to local and subnational government on how to finance biodiversity actions. We also develop a tree for decision-making process. So now they can explore what is the adequate route to take better decisions on how to finance biodiversity at local level. And they also have a guide to biodiversity financing for cities and regions. So there are some outputs from these projects, and we are now aligning these kind of mechanisms and catalogs and instruments that we are facilitating to cities and regions for their implementation, articulating with the LBSAPs specifically, and also one specific scenario that is strategic for cities is the summit that we organize also in every conference of the parties, so they can show how they are investing in biodiversity, promoting these transformative changes.
Well, thank you, Sergio. We see that it's not only a Montreal to Yerevan endeavor, but in between there was an important COP in Cali in Colombia, and thank you for your participation. In 2022 in Montreal, the civil society presented the Montreal Calls, which was a quest for these transformative change to be discussed in COPs, not only biodiversity but also the climate COPs, and Montreal played a very important role in supporting this call, the Montreal Call, and also in Cali was supportive. So we hope that also the city of Yerevan will be supportive of this discussion on transformative change. Local government action is crucial, but also local people and citizens also play a crucial role, as disconnection of nature is the #1 underlying causes of biodiversity loss. Let's now explore how citizen science can be a transformative tools to protect and reconnect to nature. So this question will be addressed to Garabet, sorry about that. In what ways did participation of the citizen science initiative influence students' environmental awareness and scientific literacy regarding water quality issues? How do citizen science projects support environmental stewardship and can be a tool to rekindle our connection to nature?
Thank you, Anna. And this has been a very interesting conversation so far. Ana Maria talked about global actionable science, the CBD. Sergio talked about the more of a local government level, LBSAPs. I'm going to go one level lower now to engaging local communities, especially the youth. And citizen science is a very valuable tool for this, I think. Originally, or about 2 decades ago, when citizen science was picking up as a new toolkit on the block, it was more or less envisioned as a data collection method where citizens could contribute to the data collection on top of what researchers were already doing by covering more space, covering more data in the same amount of time. However, as projects evolved, we also saw other benefits of citizen science. It's not just how the data is being collected. Obviously, that's very fruitful for us researchers, but also the transformative change that we see within the citizens, how this increases their awareness, how their behavior changes, they become more environmentally friendly in their daily behavior, they become stewards, they become vocal, they become active. And this is very important. I can talk about one particular pilot that we conducted in Armenia over the past 2 years. You mentioned in your introduction, I was coordinating a European project called Authors to increase the impact of citizen science. And we were coordinating this project with a dozen partners across Europe. we wanted to also have a pilot in Armenia. And since we don't have a sea, we focused on Lake Sevan, which is the biggest freshwater lake in the Southern Caucasus. It's pretty large. It's 1,250 square kilometers in surface area. And a lot of Armenians refer to this as our sea because Armenia is a landlocked country. However, there's also a lot of misconceptions or issues around this lake. On one hand, it's important to mention it is a protected area. It's part of a national park. Also, it's protected by the Ramsar Convention. It holds enormous amount of biodiversity, both freshwater and terrestrial. However, in the last few years, we've seen a number of water quality deteriorations due to mismanagement. We've seen eutrophication events. A lot of harmful algal blooms were dominating the lake. So there's been a lot of concern also from a local perspective. But again, people don't understand why this is happening. And if people don't understand it and they don't have the scientific awareness, they will not figure out what to do at the local level. So if you asked most people on the street or in those communities around the lake, why is the lake becoming green? Why are we seeing these harmful algal blooms? Because they say we're throwing plastic waste or solid waste on the lake. And obviously that's a problem, but that's not what causes eutrophication. It's the excess nutrients which is coming into the lake from agriculture, from untreated sewage and so on. But without that knowledge in the population, it's very difficult to, first of all, have a proper LPSAP, and two, also get buy-in for the policy frameworks that we need to put in place. So we started this project. We engaged 10 local schools, public schools in the area, and we engaged also extracurricular groups called RMath Labs, where they do hands-on DIY type of activities. Our students at AUA, I teach a water-related course, they developed a step-by-step handbook of how to use small tools and toolkits to measure different water quality parameters. Each of the 10 schools adopted a nearby river, a river that was walking distance to them. We went out with our students, we trained all their teachers how to use these toolkits, and we had the guidebook, and our students also made videos that were posted on YouTube so that they could follow everything step by step. So then the teachers went out with their students after they committed to adopting this nearby river, and they conducted weekly measurements. So we had 10 schools conducting weekly measurements and 10 rivers all flowing into the same lake. And at the end of last year in November, after more than half a year and a lot of data collected by all the schools, we organized a big event where all the students from these 10 schools came together. They presented each their own results to the local authorities. We had 5 mayors in attendance of that big event. We had NGOs, we had media, and it was very great to see that the students themselves were actually using actual data and telling their local governments, local authorities, hey, this river is dirty, we need to do something about it. How can we come up with local solutions? And it was good to see on multiple levels, because on one hand, the students were learning by doing. It wasn't this boring textbook thing where a teacher is explaining. They were going out every week to the river. So it was like a picnic to them. They enjoyed it, being outdoors. On the other hand, they were also learning a lot, because they were learning how to follow very specific scientific protocol, how to be consistent, how to document, how to analyze the data. And then the other element was they started interacting not just only with their classmates, but also students from other schools. They were comparing their data to each other, and they felt they can actually make a change by being vocal and having this all of a sudden direct channel to their local authorities. So all of this, on one hand, increased awareness. Now the students were saying, well, the plastic pollution or the solid waste pollution is obviously a huge issue, but this isn't what's causing it. We need to figure out how to properly clean wastewater before it reaches the lake, et cetera, et cetera. And they themselves were trying to figure out as a community what could be done about it. So all of this was very, very interesting to see. It created also a lot of momentum where we had other schools that are now interested. They're hearing about it and they're asking us, how can we join? So I think by involving the citizens, especially the youth that have all this energy and excitement to participate in scientific data collection, data analysis. They themselves become active leaders now and in the future in making the LBSAPs a lot more successful than they are.
Yeah, that's awesome. Any strategies to make sure that this project will continue? Any strategy you are implementing right now?
So I think what we did in the first phase was the most difficult phase, because we developed a lot of the toolkits, the guidebooks, the videos, all the step-by-step guides that are necessary so that anybody could join. And now that we've created the momentum, we've also, in our communication with some of the teachers that have been with us since the beginning, they are showing the willingness to become trainers of other teachers. So if new teachers now join, we have now somewhat more experienced teachers that could guide them as well, and telling them what needs to be done. But ultimately, my biggest ambition or hope is that some of this gets taken up by, say, the Ministry of Education. It gets integrated into the national curricula, and then we don't need to only talk about the Lake Sevan Basin, but we can expand this throughout the whole country. And one thing which might help us is, about 2 years ago, the Armenian government introduced a new obligation to schools where some of their teaching has to be project-based, in a project-based learning format. So what we're doing is we have this module, we have the training material, we're taking it to the teachers. We're saying, if you're confused, you don't know what to do in terms of project-based learning, this is something you can implement in your own school. And we're also linking them to different European projects and institutions where, for instance, in this project, they made a consortium of 7 schools. They applied to another European project where they got a few thousand euros to cover costs of transport, getting additional toolkits, and so on. So there are some opportunities this could be phased up, but obviously, ideally, we would like to also see some government support to turn this into a more long-term sustainable curriculum integrated component.
Wow, that's a wonderful project. We've seen that it's important to look at different values, different visions of the world, to address the underlying causes of biodiversity loss and to tackle transformative change. Could you share with us an Armenian specific perspective on transformative change? What aspects of the Armenian culture or identity could support or be supported by transformative change policies?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'll say that on one hand, maybe I start with the negative and then end with the positive. That's better. I've lived in several different countries. I've worked in different countries. And one thing which I've noticed in Armenia a bit more than elsewhere, well, 2 things. One is centralized decision-making is a bit stronger, and that's partially maybe because of some historic components as a post-Soviet state. But also there's a lot of lack or absence of capacity and expertise, especially in rural areas, which makes decentralization and decentralized governance very tricky. And we did the whole political economic analysis on the water sector a couple of years ago at the Acopian Center. And we note some of the failures of the decentralization efforts, particularly because in rural areas, you might not find a lot of people that could handle this. So working with the youth and pushing them towards, doing these activities from a very young age, cultivating their interest in STEM fields, and hopefully they pursue this further, on one hand, could potentially cover some of these gaps. On the other hand, also in Armenian culture, I've seen this tendency to romanticize and sometimes even mystify a lot of things, which could be a pro or a con. A pro because if something is mystical, maybe it's easier to engage people in, but also everything turns into rocket science. So even when we're talking about Lake Sevan eutrophication, which is a very common global phenomena, the solutions are there. In Armenia, sometimes this discussion is, how can we solve this? And by increasing awareness in the population, by letting the locals know, what the actual roots and the drivers are and how they could be tackled, maybe we remove some of this mystical elements and, you know, kind of roll the ball towards more practical solutions. These are the cons. From the pro perspective, also again about Armenian culture and identity, water is a very, I'm talking about water obviously because I'm a limnologist and this is my field, but it's a very core part of the culture and history and identity. So if we look into Armenian folklore, for instance, one of the mythical stories of the daredevils of Sasun, their mother Zovinar, which literally means from the sea, drank the water from the sacred spring and gave birth to these two Armenian heroes. So water is a sign of fertility. Lake Sevan that I mentioned already, it's said it's the Armenian jewel. So it's a very core part of the whole Armenian culture. And for instance, also in Yerevan, if you visit later throughout the year, you're going to see in Yerevan alone, there's about 3,000 drinking water fountains. They're called bulbulags, which are, after the two Artsakh wars, sometimes people erect them as sign of, you know, a martyr, as a, you know, overflowing water being a sign of eternity and so on. So because of this, it's very easy to engage people on topics of water conservation. And if we tie this to the folklore in terms of the storytelling, if we embed it in Armenian culture, protecting Lake Sevan would not only be an environmental achievement, it would also mean protecting centuries of Armenian culture and heritage. So especially if we link this to our behavior, if we do this, we're going to lose centuries of heritage. It will be a very easy and productive tool that we have at our disposal to bring everybody together on the same page, I think.
Yeah, nature is part of identity. I think this is true for Colombia and also true for Quebec here in Canada. Thank you for this. We've seen that to address transformative change, we need to act, amplify the discussion at international level. In COPs, we need to empower local government to act on implementing realistic solutions, and we need to mobilize people and to make sure that this will be deeply a value. Protecting nature will be a value. So maybe I have one question to all of you. I didn't see any question in the chat. So how to put transformative change on the COP17 agenda? You have specific recommendation that, why can we make COP17, the transformative change COP? There's still time for that. You have any solution or recommendation on that? Ana Maria, maybe first to you.
Well, thank you very much, Alain. As I said before, I think that we have to mobilize the people during the Conference of the Parties. We are going to have this space, but in reality, what we need is to understand that the implementation of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework is not mainly technical or ideological way of thinking. We need to have really political and social will to act on what we already know, because we have enough evidence to make powerful decisions at every level. Mobilizing COP17 for me means to have very concrete decisions from the governments and very concrete plans for action from the civil society and from indigenous peoples and local communities. So I am inviting everybody to come and to mobilize and to have at least one concrete action when a COP17 finalizes.
Sergio, any recommendation on how to make COP17 the transformative changes COP?
Yes, I think that from my role and from ICLEI, we have to continue insisting in local and subnational governments to support effectively the implementation of this global biodiversity framework. And the only way to do this is taking decisions at high level to incorporate biodiversity in all the planning processes of cities and local and subnational governments. So when local and subnational governments are effectively including biodiversity as a cross-cutting issue on their planning, incorporating this in public policies, assigning resources and financial resources to these topics, then you can show in COPs that it's possible to implement these and transformative changes at local level. So it's important to continue influencing public policy at local level, including these topics related to biodiversity and conservation and sustainable use.
Yeah, clear examples can be a strong model for actions and influencing others to act on. So yeah, I think you're right. It's important to stay on the ground and continue to implement these solutions and share them with others. Garabit, how to make COP17 the transformative change COP?
I think this is a very big question, and we could discuss 1 hour, but a couple of very quick ideas. I think one thing we need to return back to is our disengagement from nature, especially in urban environments. And I see this a lot with my students when I'm teaching about water courses. First class, I come to class with a bottle of water. I ask them, where does this come from? They don't know. And they either tell me the tap or the name of the company of that bottle. And I ask them, where does it go? There's no answer. So because it's become so easy for us to get ecosystem services, in our households, we've kind of lost the link. But we should also not forget that when we see more deterioration, the ecosystem services also disappear. And it becomes harder and harder and more expensive to replace these services. So in terms of city planning, I kind of echo what Sergio said. These, especially ecosystem services, in financial terms, have to be embedded in the planning. And then another element which I think the COP facilitates is collaboration and expertise sharing. There's a lot of innovation happening across the world. And by all these experts and governments coming together, I would like to see more expertise sharing, because a lot of this is also very, it becomes inspirational to some of us seeing these success stories, and we want to replicate them in our cities. And third, that sometimes, especially with a youth context or citizen engagement context works well, is a competitive element. We saw this even in one lake basin when the schools started competing with each other and seeing who can do a better job. So why not turn this into, we have all these apps nowadays, the whole world has become interconnected. We can figure out how to compete with each other in a friendly way to, see who goes further than the other. That way we can push the boundaries even further.
All right, this is a big. It's still a lot of work to do on this. I have a question for you, Sergio. Could you share with us what are your lessons learned for COP16? A lesson that you could share to your Armenian colleagues, and was there a before and an after COP in Colombia? Did that change things in Colombia?
Okay, so lessons learned from the city experience?
From the fact that Cali received COP16, was there an after and a before and after COP16 in Colombia? What that triggered afterward, and it did. You have any special recommendation to Yerevan on how to take advantage of COP17?
Okay, so hosting a COP or an event of the size of a COP, it's actually a great opportunity for the city in terms of visibility, for instance. It also attracts a lot of tourism for the city, and this includes also financial incomes for the city. But also politically, it positioned the city in the national level. So one particular experience for the city of Cali in this case was that the Inter-American Development Bank decided to invest in the city in the topics related to biodiversity. So the IDB was the financial actor that put the resources to formulate this local biodiversity action plan for the city of Cali, and is the first city in Colombia that has this political instrument. So it's an excellent opportunity also to mobilize technical, or of course financial, but also technical resources to continue strengthening biodiversity conservation and sustainable use for the city.
And maybe one last questions to all of you. I'll start with you, Ana Maria. So in Montreal, there was a side event asking for that discussion on transformative change, the underlying causes of biodiversity loss. And in Cali, there was also a side event, but it was supported by the presidency, it was supported by the CDB, and now we're trying to make that a full day. Do you think that one day we should go to having a COP specifically on transformative change, or is it a good idea to keep transformative discussion on biodiversity COP and climate COPs? And what's your view on that?
Well, thank you. It is a high ambition question, because as is structured, the way in which COP is done, the agenda, it has a very compartmentalized agenda in different topics according to the different decisions of the parties. There is not a theme that covers a specific conference of the parties. Nevertheless, it is not a question of the parties, but it is a key message from the president of the conference of the parties that host that conference. So, for example, in Cali, the government of Colombia decided to call this conference the COP of the people and call for peace with nature. So that was the overall theme. And I hope that in a future conference of the parties, the president hosting the COP will define transformative change as the overall theme of the presidency to lead the actions. It will be fantastic. So I really hope, and maybe Armenia will start leading the discussions for the future. It is quite amazing if we can reach that.
Last word for you, Garabet. The same question. do we need a COP on transformative change? Do we need a pavilion on transformative change? What's your view on that?
Pavilion maybe, a different COP, no, because I would like to limit the travel we do for also environmental purposes. But partially also because I don't like, that we keep on siloing our frameworks from each other. And I think there needs to be more collaboration with all types of stakeholders. So us putting ourselves in a corner in a separate COP might maybe also have its disadvantages. But I would like to echo what Ana Maria said. I think we could push the boundaries and commitments by local governments, by the different participating states, to engage the population more. This shouldn't only be top-down, but it should also be both top-down and bottom-up. And for the Armenian COP, we've been having discussions at AUA and with the different stakeholders, with the government, of how we could engage, for instance, more of the rural communities. Although it's happening in Yerevan, we would like to create opportunities where people from across the country could join, and maybe across the region can join. So instead of fragmentizing this more and siloing this more, I would like to go the other way and opening it up further from everyone to join and have a more comprehensive conversation to get the buy-in from everyone.
All right, Sergio, maybe 30 seconds, your view on that?
I was just thinking in terms of the opportunities and remembering about Cali, because you have this blue zone where you have all these official events and negotiations, but you also have the green zone of the COP. And in Cali, the green zone was a huge space where people, society in general, had the opportunity to involve with what is a COP and all these discussions around biodiversity. So I guess that this is also try to keep this ambition that Cali put in Green Zone, and maybe in this next COP, it could be also a good opportunity to take advantage of this Green Zone to involve most of the society in general to participate and be active in this next COP.
Yeah. All right, thank you everyone who attended this panel, and thank you Garabet, Sergio, and Ana Maria, and I want to give a special thanks to the SNAP team in Montreal, who worked really hard to prepare all this, especially Marion de Poisy and Alice de Soir. So thank you everyone. Hope you enjoyed this second panel. The next one will be announced shortly. It will be on, let me remember, I don't, the thematic will be, I don't remember. Please help me here. The 30%, reaching the 30% target. So, all right, thank you everyone. Have a nice day.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you all.
Thanks to
Thank you.
Have a nice day.
Bye.
Bye.